And if he or she says no, then guilt visits him or her. Do you know someone who says, I have no time to do anything? And they say that most of the time. I mean, everything that's offered to them, girl, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for this. I want to do this, but I don't have time. Do you know someone, and let me just add to that too. Most times people say two things that keep them stuck where they are. I don't have time, or I don't have money. Do you know someone who's constantly overwhelmed and feels miserable all the time, or most of the time? Do you know someone who agrees to do things or go places knowing that he or she does not want to do it? Someone who is in a friend group and they feel off, they feel awkward about being there, but yet they're staying in that activity. Do you know someone who overworks and feels obligated to do more and more and more to feel validated? Do you know someone who does not ask for what they need or want and does not show up for himself or herself? Do you know someone who is in relationships but feel very unhappy because she is compromising her standards and dumbing herself down to please the other person? I'm sure you know someone who falls in any of those categories, or if not all of those categories. And again, perhaps it may be you. And if you did, guess what? All of these scenarios have one thing in common, and that is the lack of boundaries and consequentially, the lack of balance. See, here's the thing. The first person who ever created boundaries is God. Yep, Yahweh, the Lord. That's right. You know, he told Adam and Eve that this is your place. I'm just paraphrasing. This is your place, the garden. You tend to it, Adam. You dominate. You name the animals. I'm going to give you a woman, and you love her. Y'all do whatever but don't touch or eat out of this tree over there, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That was a boundary. And God gives us boundaries not to restrict us from enjoying lives, but to protect us. We have freedom, right? And once Adam and Eve, most of you know the story. If you don't know anything else, you know the story. Most of you do. That once Adam and Eve violated the boundary, in other words, once they disobeyed, that's when hell broke loose. And that was the introduction of sin and a major downfall. And everything in our earth, everything failed as a result of that. I know this was a big pill to swallow, but I just had to share that really quickly. So what is a boundary, y'all? What is a boundary? See, a boundary is a parameter, a border to keep things out and to keep things inside. And according to Dr. Henry Cloud, which is one of my favorite books to read, Boundaries, and he has several books. He has Boundaries with Dating. He has a lot of books, but he's one of my favorite authors. He says a boundary is compared to a fence. It clearly defines that this is my property. This is where it begins. And this is what I am responsible for. And this is what I focus on. Here's the thing. Some examples of physical boundaries in addition to fences are signs like do not disturb signs or posters, right? Or whatever is used to make the message clear that you stay out. This is mine, or don't touch this, or don't do this. See, according to Dr. Henry Cloud, boundaries define what is me and what is not me, what is mine and what is not mine, what I have control of and what I don't. But can I tell you a secret? We do not have control over others. We don't have control over how they think and what they think or their perspectives, like whether they like or what they don't, whether they will support you or whether they will not. We cannot control. And I've even heard people say, well, setting boundaries is not, it's hard, or it's not Christ-like, or it's selfish. There's so many distorted narratives around that. We cannot control what people think. The moment that we allow ourselves to think that we can control others, then we make room for an invader or an intruder called overwhelm or stress. Anytime a client has walked into my office, or in this case, my virtual office, and I hear the overwhelm, I already know that there's a boundary that's been violated. I already know that before they even open their mouth, before I even begin to explore, that somewhere in their lives in the last 2 weeks or the last 3 weeks or the last month since I've seen them last, that somewhere they have overcommitted themselves, overextended themselves, allowed something to come into their space, allowed something to disrupt their peace or their sleep or their finances or their time. They